and misconduct. Uh, just for the sake of, yeah. So let me tell you that the concept of publication ethics and research ethics and research misconduct is not very much new actually. So when I was a kid, I mean, comparatively younger, there was this show called The Flop Show, and this was talking about a PhD scholar and the travails that he goes through when he's talking about the research activities. So if you get the time and you can note down this URL, or maybe even if you type Flop Show PhD scholar, then you will be able to uh, see this series and see this particular serial or this particular episode. Uh, I am not showing you this episode. I would have loved to show you this episode, but we have only 1 hour at hand, and that's the reason why we are proceeding ahead. So anyhow, so the context of this talk is basically the China's Supreme Court calls for crackdown on paper mills, and then there is a nationwide audit of research misconduct after thousands of papers are retracted in the last year, and people are now questioning when will India also start doing the same. And there are certain reports of research misconduct at India also, and there is this website called the Retraction Watch, and if you see that most of the people are using plagiarism of text, that is Control C and Control V, and the research misconduct had also been reported as per the state, and most research conduct misconduct happens in Tamil Nadu. Maharashtra is in the third position. That's a bit of concern for me because I'm also in Maharashtra. So, therefore, it is high time that we talk about this subject. And my talk is very much centered on the biology and biotechnology, although I'm from engineering background. So essentially, the science develops by communication of research, and at the same time, the academic environment for the last 1.5 decades is about publish or perish. That means if you don't publish your results, then your academic career is doomed. So, in a rush to publish, there are people who are not having well designed experiments or protocols. They are resorting to bad data collection methods. Their data is not, data does not follow the integrated principles, and their data analysis is not valid, and then the validity of conclusions is questionable. So that is going to cause a lot of problems with the research and scientific development in this country. And it is always good to have a dissemination of your research in peer-reviewed journals, but because UGC imposed this concept of mandatory publication for research and the master's thesis, what happened since 2014, and this has typically started in 2014, UGC mandated mandatory publications, and therefore a lot of publication houses came up with these predatory journals who were just taking money and passing the papers overnight. They're printing the papers overnight. So therefore, they are saying that I have an international publication, whereas it was being published from a room in Hyderabad. This was Hyderabad. I'm saying Hyderabad, but then there are people from other states also. Okay, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about basically publication ethics, and they are basically the rules of good scientific practice. Now, there are organizations who pass these rules or they pass these guidelines, and there are various aspects of the research process. Okay, when you're talking about the publication ethics, or when you're typically talking about ethics, there are various aspects of the research process, like for example, the experiment design, the data collection method, etc., etc., and also the publication practices and authorship determination. uh, I also intend to talk about publication misconduct. So basically, for proposing, performing on reviewing research, there are several misconducts which are reported, and some of the misconduct which are there and which are not documented in the books are fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. These are what well documented, but the other research misconduct that I am talking about is also documented in that particular episode of PhD Scholar. If you get the time, please see that. Now, the fabrication is like this, and this was introduced to me by my teacher, Dr. Kallu Das, now Dr. Kallu Das. He was my physics teacher, and what he said was he was at that point of time doing his PhD at Rani Durgavati University, Jabalpur, and that's a state government university. And he was concerned about people making up data and presenting the results as if they were real data. So what he suggested that people were doing is that they were bending a stick of the broom, that you are seeing the broom on the screen. They were bending a stick of the broom and then plotting the data points, and then they are saying that, look, this is my mathematical model. So the broomstick bent is the mathematical model of the experiment that they were conducting. And he was expressing deep concern about the status of research in the country. And there were talks about falsification of data also. So they're manipulating the research materials, manipulating equipment, then the process and the data, or changing or omitting the part of the data. Like for example, what can happen is whenever you are creating a mathematical model, or whenever you are creating a protocol, sometimes what will happen is that people will omit the data which is not fitting to your convictions. Okay, they will omit the data, and then they will say I have got 97% accuracy, or they will say that I have got 99% accuracy. You will see typically this kind of behavior in computer science also. uh, but they say that, and that's the problem. So, research is not therefore accurately documented or accurately represented in the records. So, this is what the case is. So, for that, there is a committee on publication ethics which has been created in 1997, and these ethics are concerned about, and very much concerned about, the study design and ethical approval. They are talking about data analysis. They're talking about authorship, conflict of interest, and you can actually download the guidelines of COPE, the Committee on Publication Ethics, from the internet. It's free to download from there. And they are talking about redundant publications, plagiarism, duties of authors, media relations, and advertising. So I will be concentrating on these topics, on these parts in my uh, presentation. So here, in specifically where there are subjects involved, that suppose for example people are doing the detection of eye disease, or detection of lung cancer, detection of brain tumor. There are several studies typically I know which are being done in this university, MGM University. They are doing this kind of research, but when they procure that data, along with it comes the patient data also. Now it is your duty of the researcher is to hide the data. It's the duty of that researcher is to blur that data. Why? Because this concerns the privacy of that particular individual. A Maybe say 50 to 60 years ago, the privacy of individuals were not that important. People were really, they used to put their names in the papers. But now privacy has become of utmost importance, and therefore you are talking about fully informed consent now, first of all. So whenever you go to a hospital, you go into an operation theater, and if that particular hospital is a research center also, so before doing the operation, they will take your consent, the signed and informed consent, that look, I can use your data, the data that we are procuring for research. Do you give your consent or not? So many times patient will sign, or the relatives of the patient will sign without actually knowing what is happening, but they are trying to inform you, look, that I am going to use your data for uh, for research. Just a moment. Somebody is continuously. Okay, so I'll just. There you go. Now, okay. Back to my presentation. Yeah. Okay. So then, when you are talking about protocols, the experimental protocols, the people who are in biology and bioinformatics, they will understand what protocols mean. Similarly, there are other protocols in basic sciences. So there, they should seek to answer questions, not to collect the data. Now, see, uh, there was this, I don't know, if you look in the history of this country named France. Okay, I was in France at that point of time when this was told to me that a particular forest is there, a protected forest is there in the south of France, and this particular forest was catching fire again and again, right? That is, similarly, forest fires are happening in Uttarakhand. So, similar things are happening also in the south of France. Why this is happening, and therefore, somebody suggested to them, you have to collect a remote sensing data. So what they did, there are remote sensing data of high resolution, there are remote sensing data of low resolution. They collected every possible data, and then they are coming to the government and saying, look, we have collected all kinds of data. What now? You tell me what to do. So I'm saying is they should try to answer the questions and not to collect the data. And if you collect data without any control or without any kind of guidance, then you will end up in junk, collecting junk. That's of no use. So, and then you have to, you usually, when you are developing a new protocol, you have to mutually agree with your peer researcher. Otherwise, अरे ये वो कर रहा है, अरे ये वो कर रहा है, that can also happen. So then, during this particular part, you have to define the roles. Who will do what? Okay, so you will do the experiments. I will collect the data. I will analyze the data. This guy will prepare the charts. This guy will prepare the research paper. You define the roles and also the authorship. Okay, before the research commences, you have to agree on this before the research commences. Otherwise, later it leads to confrontations. I have witnessed similar confrontations while I was in the Department of Space, because people were saying that, look, this was my idea, this was my work, this was my code, and this was that. Department of Space, when I was there, and they have this kind of conflicts there because it's a mixed group. Okay, I mean, I was working with one group where there was one agriculturist, there were two mathematicians, one of them is me, and then there were people from environmental science, there was people from wildlife, all kinds of people are there in a one single group, and they continuously argue about the author of authorship. And there has to be an ethics committee. So it's typically when it comes to animal subjects or human subjects, there has to be an ethics committee. Okay, so they will decide. So we will be talked about, we are going to talk about in detail about data analysis. Now you have to appropriately analyze the data. Now this is what is very important here. Now I am telling you that there are something called statistical hypothesis tests. This is not the subject of that particular talk which I am giving. But if there is a talk on statistical hypothesis testing, I will be happy to give that talk to you. But there was, I mean, I was interacting with one of my fellow researchers, I mean, about 10 years back, and that person said, look, I have used the chi-square test, I have used the F test, I have used the T test, I have used the Z test, and I have used every bloody goddamn test in the world to prove that my data is okay. But then I concluded that if you are using the Z test, why are you using the T test? They are for different things. So why did you do that? So, and the particular researcher did not have any answer for this. That's very sad to see that. Okay, so I'm also saying that the appropriate analysis means you have to analyze the entire data set. Okay, there might be data where there are some signal errors. Like for example, if you are doing working with cancer biology, typically that will happen that there are sensors, the cancer related sensors, and some sensors are not working. You have to eliminate that particular data. So you have to, that is a part of the data cleaning. But if the data is completely clean, then in that sense, you have to collect the entire data set and process the entire data set, and then you have to do all the processes and all the sources and methods. You have to disclose this in the research paper. So how we collected the data, how we process the data, how we analyze the data, everything you have to disclose in the research paper, and also in your research thesis, dissertation report, research report, wherever you're talking, you have to be completely transparent about the data analysis part, so that the other person does not suspect you of data manipulation, because one of the major concerns over the last 5 years that I'm seeing, is data manipulation, and typically COVID related data manipulation has been done a lot. Uh, then if there are any considerations of biases, okay, then it should be also discussion, it should be disclosed in the discussion session. If there are biases in the data, okay, I have collected only data from this particular type of individuals, okay, if that is the kind of bias, so therefore that should be included in the discussion session. Now, let me tell you that I have the experience of working with brilliant minds. Like, for example, I was working with Professor H.P. Dixit at one time. Professor H.P. Dixit is a well-established mathematician. I mean, was an well-established mathematician uh, in the early, how to say, 1950 to 1950 to 2000. He was holding several posts of the vice chancellorship, and during his vice chancellorship he was also writing papers at that time, and he was writing papers. Okay, it was not that he was asking any somebody else to write his papers, but he was writing his own papers. And sometimes when I visited his home, I would see that he would be working on his research with very multicolored pens and all that. He would have a notebook, a spiral notebook. He would write various things with that, with multicolored pens, and then he would hand over those sheets to me and said, "Look, Sudashil, you go and type this for me. Can you do that?" So I was participant to that particular research which he did, and I am witness to this fact that he published three different papers. I was in Bhopal for 3.5 years. In 3.5 years, he published three different papers each year. So that was his capability. I'm saying that. But during this interaction, I what he said was that while I am writing the papers myself, I usually prefer ordering the authors by alphabet. Okay, so probably he will be the third author or the last author because his name began with H, something like that. So he would find ways in order to encourage younger people. That is the way he pursued his research without having any attachment to what he was doing. So I learned that from him. When I went to the Department of Space, I then found out a different mechanism of having authorships. That means whose idea was it, whose project is it, who initiated, who gave the work, who did most of the work, and who supported. So there was a different angle of authorship in the Department of Space. And I discussed what Professor Dishi taught to me in the Department of Space, and he said, no, no, this will lead to a lot of conflicts, and that's the reason why we prefer the way that we do it. So, and now what is typically happening is that people are putting the names of the authors randomly. Suppose the husband is writing one paper, he will put the name of the wife into the author, set of the authors. He does that. Or maybe wife, girlfriend, special friend, whatever that kind of thing is, they do that. And in order to promote the research, they say that I am trying to do this promoting the research, but this is not ethical practice. So essentially nowadays the journals have turned to who has done what. So there is a concept of taking the ownership of all your work. So what first author has done, what the second author has done, what the third author has done, you have to write that at the end of the paper. Those are called listing individual contributions. Okay, so that is the intellectual contribution after. So the paper is now reflecting those intellectual contributions. And then always, to avoid dispute, agree this before starting the product. Maybe if you are working with an alien group, that means you don't know the people well, so have a written document where you are saying that, look, this is what we are going to do, and this is what the authorship order is going to be. Okay, so that is taking the public responsibility. And then if you go to any journal website, you will find that there is a for the author section, at the journal website, for avoiding these confusions. And Let me know. This is one of the incidents that has happened recently. Somebody actually included the name of Mrs. Draupadi Murmu, in the list of authors, and somebody wrote also Barack Obama, and these issues have been brought forward. It has come to the light that somebody included Barack Obama as a co-author in the journal paper. And it's a biotechnology paper. What has Barack Obama to do with the biotechnology paper? Nobody knows, but somebody did that. Okay, I'm not taking the name of that individual. So there are also what you will call as conflict of interests. Okay, so when suppose a particular cigarette company is funding the research, you would tend to write a research where it's saying that cigarette does not or tobacco does not cause cancer. You will tend to do that because those tobacco companies are supporting your research. But this has happened actually. So there's this article in history.com. This article is there. The cigarette companies use doctors to push smoking into the society. This has happened. All right. And then, so that's why this is a conflict of interest. The tobacco company sponsoring research to investigate cancer caused by tobacco, it's a conflict of interest. And that's the reason why, wherever such interests are there, you must disclose it. Now, as a reviewer, also, I mean, I also review journal papers. As a reviewer, also, it is my duty to declare the conflict of interest. Now, sometimes, I mean, at a particular time, what happened is that a particular individual wrote one paper. My supervisor, my own supervisor, was a co-author in that particular paper. Okay. And of course, I have been away from my supervisor for more than 10 years now. So, but then when this journal paper came to me, so I said, look, I have a conflict of interest because my supervisor is a co-author here. So they allowed, because I made that announcement, so they allowed for that. Okay. So that's the reason. It's in your interest that you declare your conflict of interest if there is any. Okay, and of course, it's the duty of the reviewer to give a constructive review, but we'll talk about that later. So now we are talking about that here. It is called a peer review process. So whenever you are writing research, it is important to get it evaluated by your peers. There are some people who actually are working in the same field or in a similar field. Your publication goes to them, they read your publication, they say, okay, no, look, this publication is a good contribution, it adds to the knowledge, and that is the process of peer review. If your journal paper, that your journal article that you have submitted to a journal, if it is not explaining the entire process, the reviewer is in his right to question your process. The reviewer is in his right to question your graphs, is in his right to propose new methods. So, but the reviewer should give a constructive review. That is the reason why the peer review is done. What can be added to make the paper better? The reviewer said, अरे ये paper गलत लिखा हुआ है. You should not. The reviewer should not do this. The paper is badly written. No English native. ये वो. These are unnecessary comments by reviewers, and that is what I have come to learn through the process of reviewing. Okay. And then now there have been cases which are reported. Typically Professor Sanjay Mittal from IIT Kanpur, he has told me this story that when he was younger actually, when he was younger, he wrote one paper on the simulation of certain things flowing through the air. Like, for example, a cylinder is dropping through the atmosphere. Okay, and then he proposed a particular simulation method. He submitted that paper to a journal, an Elsevier journal, a proper journal there, and then it was rejected by the journal. 2 years later, the same journal produces the same paper by the editor. Okay, by the editor of that journal. He is the author, and nowhere Sanjay Mittal's name is there. Such things have happened, and this was reported to the journal. Okay, then there are consequences of this kind of action. So whenever some paper comes to you for peer review, you are not supposed to use the data, argument, interpretation whatsoever. You are just supposed to learn from that paper. One of the reasons is that you have to learn from that paper and then evaluate constructively. So that is the requirement of peer reviewers. Okay. And therefore, it is also important to submit to quality journals. Now, if there is a suspicion of misconduct, if you if as an author you suspect of misconduct, then you have to correspond with the editor in confidence. Okay, so that means you are not supposed to copy it to anyone. So it is in confidence that you are corresponding. All right. Then what is the requirement from journals? It is accurate descriptions of their peer review, selection and appeals process. Okay, and then provide regular audits of acceptance rates and publication times. Now, if you go to the Elsevier website, a typically Elsevier website only, you will see something called a publication rate and publication time, etc. Those things are given to you. Those are public information. Why this information is given? So that the author will consider whether I will should publish in that particular journal or not. That's the requirement. So this audit is very much important. Now, redundant publication. Now, again, I have witnessed this. So there is this journal called Geocarto. In my field, I work in the domain of remote sensing, geoinformatics technology. I work there, and the specific domain is lidar. Okay, light detection and ranging, and still more specific domain is visualization of that data. Why? Because the data is very, very huge. So the visualization of the data is a mark of concern. So that's the reason there are several works specifically on visualization of lidar data. So if anybody is interested, I am again saying that you are welcome to come and discuss with me personally in my office. Okay, so I saw in Geogato International the same set of authors, just changing the order. It is the same paper, almost the same paper, almost the same kinds of words, the same kind of figures, and the same hypothesis, same theory, etc., etc. Two papers, one after the other, have been published in the same journal. I saw that, and that is unethical to do. Okay, and I collected those papers and I showed it to my supervisor, and he was laughing. Well, look, how careless are these people? How careless are these people? All right. So now uh, you can only publish similar papers, okay, if there is more confirmation required, more confirmation about the theory that you have proposed, more confirmation about the experiments that you have done. Okay, so there is no need for redundant publications, and let me tell you that redundant publications are very much prominent in very, very high level government organizations. That they are there. Okay, I'm not taking the names of the organizations, but I have witnessed that. So, and therefore, at the time of submission, the author should declare the similar whether there are similar papers in the press. That means from him, and then related papers, even if they are in a different language. Like for example, you have communicated. Okay, in India it's very tough, but if you go to France, for example, the people know the French language, and there are French language journals, and there are English language journals. So they both kinds of journals are referred to. If you go to Germany, they know German. There are German journals, and German journals of very high quality, and there are English journals of very high quality. They can be producing, the reproducing also. Like they publish one paper in German, and they translate that paper, publish that in English also. So the duty of the author is to alert the editor, okay, to communicate to the editor, look, there is a German paper that has earned more citations. I believe it will also get popularity if you publish in English, and therefore please accept this paper. It is the duty of the author to communicate this to the editor. Now, there is plagiarism. Plagiarism is basically this is unreferenced use of published or unpublished ideas. Like, well, this is very sad for me because there is this person, Dr. CNR Rao. He holds a Bharat Ratna. Okay, he's a great scientist. He's a scientist of great repute. Okay, one of his research scholars, he just copied some one sentence, or one or two sentences from another paper and pasted it into his paper. CNR Rao had to publicly apologize for that just because of one student's error. A great scientist like CNR Rao has had to publicly issue an apology. Just imagine the responsibility that the author, that means you are going to be a future author in a research publication, you bear great responsibility for the reputation of the teacher or any other scientist that you are working with. Okay, so CNR Rao had to publicly, unfortunately, apologize. And you can, as you can see, this article is there in Nature, and this was somewhere in 2012 that has happened. And this plagiarism can happen at any stage of planning. Whether you are writing, when you are talking about research, or when you are talking about publication, or you just steal somebody else's idea. If you see that again, I'm telling you, look at the Jaspal Bhatti's episode, and you will find instances of these kind of plagiarism in that particular episode. Now, again, I'm saying this is one of the things that is very important is the duty of the editor. So when you are submitting the journal, submit a paper to the journal, it goes to the editor. Okay. So editor should not directly reject. It is the duty of the editor to pursue the case in detail. So it should be unbiased. We should not have any bias of any kind of form, whether it is gender bias or, for example, racial bias, linguistic bias, religion bias. Any form of bias is not allowed for the editor. Okay, you should talk, the editor should talk basically only on the importance, originality, clarity, study relevance. And then each journal has something called a focus area. Or now there are journals, okay, now I'm telling you this very clearly. There are journals, and I will show you an example also, which will publish anything under the sun, anything over the earth's surface, which will publish. There are journals, and those journals are not good journals. Each journal, if it's a quality journal, it is important that this particular journal has a particular theme and a focus. It's very important to have a focus on the journal. So that journal will be, focusing by whether this paper fits. First question that you, whether this paper fits into the theme of the journal. If not, then you say, look, this does not fit into this. Can I suggest you another journal where this paper will fit? Okay. And nowadays, let me tell you that this has become much more easier. If you go to, say, for example, Springer website, or if you go to the Elsevier website, if you go to Taylor and Francis, if you go to Wiley, there are journal suggestion mechanisms. That means you type in your abstract, you type in your keywords, type in the title, and you will be able to find relevant journals to your paper. Okay, and one of the most difficult phases in our lives, I mean, when this AI was not that prominent, one of the most difficult phases in our life is finding the relevant journal for publishing our paper. So that has become easier because of the invention of AI. The AI will say, okay, this particular journal has this focus, this particular journal has this focus. So therefore, your paper is more relevant to this journal, your paper is more relevant to that journal. Yes, it is very much possible to do that, right? Now, it can be possible that somebody has done certain experiment and he has concluded something. So that's a published journal. Okay, that particular paper is receiving a lot of citations. It is possible, and it is the duty of the author to challenge that particular study. Of course, as a scientist, you have to challenge that particular study. So you suppose, for example, you are to challenge it. So editor should be unbiased and let the peer reviewers investigate on that. Okay, should be given a sympathetic hearing. That is what I'm saying. And then negative results are also important. See, positive results are good, of course, good, but negative results are also important. in the future how not to do an experiment. Okay, as is famously said that Edison, it was asked from Edison, that what did you learn by inventing the bulb? What Edison said is, I learned 999 ways not to make the bulb. Okay, those are negative reasons and those are important. One way is there, of course, to make the bulb, but how not to do it, that is also very important. All right, and all studies, of course, you have to be peer reviewed. Just let's say, just because it is being sponsored by the Human Resource and Development Ministry, you just don't have to accept the paper directly. Okay, and if a paper is found to possess flaws, the editor is fully responsible there. Okay, to correct the error. Now this is again one other another area where I have an experience here with the relationship with the media, and it is only after this particular incident that my relationship with the media became a bit, I became apprehensive of the media, because what happened was I work in a particular field called LiDAR, as I told you earlier. Now, in this happened in the year 2007. Okay. So I went to a conference in Hyderabad and I won the best paper award. And I was a student at that time. I won the best paper award. And then what happened is, when I returned back to the campus, so there is what we call as a press, there's a PR group. Okay. So every university now has that. IIT Kanpur also had that. And there was this PR group. They contacted me and they introduced me to certain journalists. And the journalist asked me this one simple question, like, is it possible to find out terrorists by your technology? Okay. Now, what I said is, in 25 years of time, this is my answer to that journalist. In 25 years of time, when psychology and artificial intelligence would be integrated with this technology, only then we will be able to, which is happening now, of course, only then we'll be able to catch the terrorists. This is what I said. This is my complete statement. But then in the next day, an article was published in the local newspaper of Kanpur that actually took my name. The Suddhashil Ghosh, a researcher in the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Kanpur, has said that you can catch terrorists with LiDAR technology. Here they have actually written that in a column. Okay, and this is completely misleading information with that did not include what I said completely. Okay, in 25 years of time, when artificial intelligence and psychological factors get integrated into technology, only that they did not do that. So that's the reason why the author should help journalists for producing accurate reports. They did not consult me after they wrote the report. That is what my sadness was. They should have consulted me. They should have talked with me. This is what, is this what you said? They did not do that. And in case there are human participants in your experiment, like for example, there was one study which was done by the Institute of Biotechnology, IBT, that is, there was one study which says that, like, yeah, we went to various farms and we collected a lot of data, soil samples. When we published these results, the farmer said, look, first of all, tell us what you found out from the soil samples that you have collected from our place. It is the responsibility of the researcher to communicate that. Okay. Then you publish this to the mass media. If you don't do this, what will happen is, then there will be other third party interventions happening. If you don't do that, you have to do it first. It's your responsibility. Otherwise, you are going to cause problems to other people. All right. Then your authors, you have to, uh, when you are going to a meeting, it is the responsibility of the conference organizer to advise the authors how you should talk to the journalist, because the journalist, remember that particular journalist or any particular journalist has a different interest. So there is something called scientific journalism. That's a different issue. That's a different issue, but that's not mainstream journalism. what you currently see in NDTV, Republic TV, or whatever TV, whatever other TV networks that are available, what you see is there is something called sensationalism. Okay, the example which I gave you from media, that was called sensationalism. How people will read my newspaper, or how people will be attracted to my channel. Okay, so suppose for example, say somebody is always shouting on the channel, always shouting, yeah, this and that, etc., etc. Then is this the way to attract people to the channel? All right. So there was Doordarshan at a particular time. There was only the Doordarshan, and that was the majorly watched channel at that particular time. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, and nobody shouted over each other in those areas, in those times nobody shouted it. They were coolly discussing the news, and suddenly sensationalism came in. So always, that's the reason why authors have to be advised by the organizers if the journalists are to attend meetings. Now again, I'm saying this with a lot of humor here. And when you are doing advertisement of your research, okay, and advertising can actually make things biased. Okay, they can influence the researcher, they can influence the editor, they can do that. But editor's job is to stay neutral, the author's job is to stay stuck, stay close to whatever he is doing. But maybe you have to always say that misleading advertisements must be refused. Okay, like for example, there is this goat and the chicken here. Okay, and if somebody is in a bioengineering conference, a genetic engineering conference, somebody can say, look, you can take the goat's genes out of the goat and then insert it into the chicken's genes by genetic engineering, and then when you will eat the chicken, you will have the flavor of the goat's meat. I mean, somebody might be actually saying that, you know, and that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Somebody might be actually saying that. Okay, but this kind of advertisements regarding genetic engineering might be there, so you have to refuse that. Okay, so the this is the misconduct, no, principle of misconduct. So this is talking about the general. The intention is to cause others to regard something as true, which is not true. Okay, the intention is to actually deceive people. Okay, for misconduct. Misconduction means I want to deceive the people. Okay, and there is no what you call no regard for the consequences. You don't really care about the consequences, what will happen, and that's the reason why the best practice is to have complete honesty with full disclosure. That's okay. Now, it is the job of the editor to investigate the misconduct. Okay, so if the editor suspects the misconduct, editor should not just throw away the paper, because that can be problematic later. Okay, like for example, one of the cases that has happened. I mean, that I have heard, one of the cases, that there was this person who published in a fraud journal. Okay, published in a fraud journal, totally fraud. And then that particular organization gave incentives to researchers. Okay, that particular organization has had as a principle, as a law, or as a policy, that I want to promote the research, a good quality research. Now the application was sent to the research head, that look, this publication has been made, and so I should be given the money. Now here, here is the problem. Immediately on seeing the paper, there are suspenses of misconduct. Misconduct means it is not a peer reviewed paper, it is not this, it is not that. You get to get to suspect that with several amounts of reading. Okay, just for the sake of example, I'm telling you that while I was in IIT Kanpur, I collected 4 GB of literature. I've read 4 GB of literature. Okay, So that is the amount of literature, more than 3,000 papers I have read during my PhD. While you are reading quality papers, you will get to know which paper is good and which paper is bad, which paper is good, well written, and which paper is badly written. There are instances, and that's the reason why when somebody receives such applications of reimbursement, then immediately there is a conclusion there is something fishy with this application. All right, but then they cannot disregard the case. So there has to be a complete investigation on that. And then on anonymously, that COPE can advise on this anonymously. So I suggest that to all your researchers, since it is important to know by how do I know whether a journal is reliable or not. The first thing is to go to the publisher of the journal and see whether they are registered with the COPA. Okay, so there is a publicationethics.org. That's a website. You have to go to that website, search for the publisher. Search for the publisher. If that publisher is there, then the publisher is reliable. The first stage of reliability is there here. Okay. And of course, the final decision is always upon the editor because you cannot influence the editor. Now, allegation, if there is an allegation of misconduct, it should be handled carefully. And because legal legitimacy cannot be there. Like, suppose the example that I was giving, okay, the research policy example. So then the researcher can say, look, I will complain to ICMR, I will complain to DST, I will complain to ICT about all. So you are going to make unnecessary communications to several amounts of people. Ultimately, who gets the bad name? The bad name goes to the university who is supporting the researcher. The intention of the university is to support the researcher. The intention of the agency is to support the researcher. And you are writing to unnecessary mails to people, who gets the bad name? The university. So ultimately, the problem is that legal legitimacy the editor does not have. So what is the rule? What is the duty of the editor? Is to investigate very clearly. It has to be investigate, confidentially seek expert advice, etc. And if there is an allegation of serious misconduct, you have to report this to the higher authority, to the authority of the author, okay, to the organization of the author. You have to report this, okay, and an author has to be given an opportunity. Always, you have to say it's a judgmental matter. So you have to give an opportunity to the author to respond, okay. If there is no misconduct found, then the editorial process should be proceed. It should proceed in a normal way. Okay, so if there are convictions of wrongdoing, so then you have to issue the letter of explanation, reprimand. Reprimand means not lagana. Okay, to scold people. Okay, so that's called a reprimand in a good quality English. I say. So there is a formal letter to the head of the institution, publication of notice to redundant publication. And let me tell you that when a publication is retracted, this particular matter is publicly announced. Okay, it is on the journal website. Once you have submitted paper, that paper is not available. Paper is withdrawn. But then in the place of that paper, they change this text here, retracted paper. And there is this website called Retraction Watch. Your name is engraved in that website forever, for eternity, if you engage in misconduct. So if you are doing research with, mm, sorry, excuse me. So if you are doing research with people from the medical field, there is this World Association of Medical Editors, and everybody agrees that similar research can be done by two different institutions. So one institution in America is doing the same thing as one institution in India, maybe. It's very much possible. So in that case, how do we produce, I mean, how do we prevent a duplication? Because it so happened that you might have heard of calculus. Okay, so there was this guy called Leibniz. Okay, and there's this guy called Isaac Newton, and then Isaac Newton and Leibniz both invented calculus together at the same time. All right, and then there was an investigation, massive investigation was there, massive controversy was there. Then who invented calculus first? Now, calculus is attributed both to Leibniz and Newton now. Okay, so because it's very difficult to find out who did that. All right. So then it was realized that look, there has to be a global network, and that's the reason why there is this World Association of Medical Editors, specifically if you are working with medical people. Okay, so I'm saying that there is this. They will do this periodic world congresses, and they will establish this close liaison with existing editor groups, and that will ensure that there is no duplication of work. Okay, essentially, even if there is unintentional. So again, I am talking about conflict of interest. Any interest is there. Okay, like for example, the editor's chacha or editor's uncle, editor's son, editor's son-in-law is publishing the paper. Editor should say, I recuse myself. That means I am not going to make a decision on this paper. Or suggest the author to publish in a different journal. I will not intervene in this process. Okay. So if there is a conflict of interest, it is in the interest of the editor to publish that, but I mean to actually state that very clearly, right? And then you have to publish these on that website, and then update. You have to keep on updating this as required. So what should be disclosed? Editor should clearly explain. Okay. Now, that's what the last statement what I'm saying. If there is a paper which is presented to the to the editorial board, you say like, look, he's the son of the editor. Can I refuse his paper? So immediately I'm saying that they should advise the son to publish in some different journal. That's the that's the only way of recusing oneself of making the decision. Okay. And even then, I'm saying that the second last statement here, editor should manage peer reviewers' conflicts of interest. This peer reviewer has to declare, like, do you have any conflict of interest with this particular author? If there is, then peer review should clearly say, no, I will not evaluate this particular paper. Then, as I told you, there are many funding agencies, and recently, I'm telling you this again because, again, recently one experience that I had was that we are organizing in this particular year, the MGM University is organizing. There's a conference on machine intelligence and data analysis. Okay, so now this particular conference is being supported, technically supported by IEEE. All right. And there is, of course, a conference chair, the conference co-chair, etc. I am the co-chair of this particular conference. And people ask, now people who are not from the IEEE Bombay section, this conference is technically supported by the IEEE Bombay section. Okay, so that means IEEE Bombay section covers Maharashtra, essentially speaking. Now there are these guys who are from Delhi. They are, society from Delhi. They approached the university authorities, not the conference organizers. They did not write to the conference organizers. They approached the university authorities that we want to collaborate with you in this conference. Now, for an international conference, if a university wants to organize an international conference, by IEEE regulations, it is necessary to start 18 months earlier. So any kind of interventions should be done 18 months earlier. You cannot come into between and then say, look, I have done this. You cannot do that. That is unethical to do. So there is this society called Soft Computing Research Society. They approached directly, not the conference chair, but the university authorities. I am telling you this because they have done this recently. We have communications. Okay. So they're coming in between, and we had to tell them, look, this is the middle of the. I mean, there are only 3 months remaining in the conference. The reception of papers, we have stopped receiving the papers. We have stopped accepting the papers. We have stopped sending the papers for review. Now the final papers are in discussion. I cannot do anything about it now. So you cannot intervene. And we had to tell them very crystal clear. But the final decision, of course, again will be taken by the authorities because the authorities have said this. I am telling you that people do this. People try to pressurize the editors, the conference chair, etc., by doing this kind of behavior. So there are various categories of misconduct, as you can see here. So there is we are talking about misconduct now, publication misconduct. So there are basic faults in study design. Okay, so in any scientific study, you have to design an experiment. That's very important. So there is a book. There's a book by Montgomery. If you can go to the Amazon website, there's a book by Montgomery, which is saying design and analysis of experiments. They say that. Okay. So in that book, the entire process is designed, described. How do you analyze? How do you everything is there. You have to just read that book and then design accordingly. But then if you commit a fault, then it's a big problem. So then again, next is failure to follow accepted ethical procedures. You have to follow the protocol. When it comes to live subjects and animals and or humans, you have to follow the protocol. Okay. So then breaches of confidentiality, that is also there. Like for example, you are supposed to not supposed to take the name of anybody in the paper also. Then you do not declare how this data was obtained. You just say कि data was obtained, fine, but you don't declare. You don't declare the process. Some certain mechanical engineer goes to Indo-German tool room and does something, creates some data and printing here, doing the analysis, and without any certificate from IJTR, it will be rejected directly. So again, electronic manipulation of images, and this has been done recently in various journals. Electronic manipulation of images. That means there is one image published in one particular journal. They took that paper and they changed the image, and then they are publishing it in another paper. This is also definitely wrong because this is going to change the scientific record. This is going to disinfluence, like cause a negative influence on the future scientific research. All right. And then, of course, breach of copyright and plagiarism. Editors, publishers, and peer reviewers, they can also commit misconduct. Let me tell you, like, for example, you submit a paper to the journal, they will steal the idea. That is misconduct. They retain the papers. That is the misconduct. Okay. And therefore, every journal should have a well-defined appeals procedure. Okay. And the publisher cannot escape the responsibility. If it is Springer, if it is Wiley, if it is any international publisher of any great repute, whether it is Nature, then also there has to be a ownership of the particular event. So there is, you cannot interfere with the editorial freedom. And example, revenge tactic, this also experience is there with me, that the reviewer rejected my paper, so I will reject the reviewer's paper. That also has been done in conferences. Yes, that experience also I have. Okay, so these are the various types of publication misconduct. So, submission of fraudulent data, incomplete or improperly processed data, then breach of confidentially, the authorship issues, competing interests, redundant or duplicate publication, plagiarism. So these are there. So fraudulent data means results are too good to be true. No, essentially what is happening, please understand this. Whenever you are collecting data by, suppose, say, for example, from electronic devices contain noise. There is something called a noise to signal ratio, SNR, signal to noise ratio, SNR they call it. There is bound to be noise in your experiment. And if there is noise in your experiment, then what you have to do? you have to make sure that that particular noise is filtered. All right, you have to filter the noise, or you have to declare the noise is there. Then because of instrumental documentation, the noise has to be there. So therefore, when your graph is being generated, you are seeing something different compared to the graph. Even a nuclear reactor, let me tell you this, by physics theory, by the theory of physics, a nuclear reactor or nuclear reaction follows exponential mechanism. Even the nuclear reactor, when there are some exam sample data sets which are there, the the decay data which is there publicly available, you will see perfect exponential distribution is not there in that particular data. This is very, will be very surprising if all the data points fall on the curve. It is very surprising. It is not possible. So it is, the results are too good to be true. Okay. And the statistical analysis of the data might reveal flaws. So many people, what people are doing is they are now opening up an account in GitHub. On GitHub, they upload the data. Look, the data is available, the analysis is available, the code is available. You can see all my code. Download the data, process the data, do all your analysis and see how things are performing. You can all do that. Okay. And remember that the fraudulent papers, fraudulent data, etc., they can corrupt future research, and that's very dangerous. And I'm telling you uh, one of the examples here. The example is that there is something called in mathematics, it's called control theory. The control theory is used by the people who are in electrical engineering or electronics engineering. The control theory. Control theory is based on feedback systems. All right. So there, whenever there is an input to the system is going to give you a feedback. Now, between input and feedback, there is a latency. There is a latency. So that latency may be 4 second, 5 second. There is a latency. Now, this is an engineering concept. Okay, this is an engineering concept. I'm saying if you give an input to the system, the feedback will come maybe after some time. There is a latency. Now, imagine the atmosphere as a system. Okay, and imagine a single water droplet in that atmosphere. Imagine a single water droplet. Now, this water droplet evaporates, forms the cloud, there is a rain, and then comes back to the same place. This is what we call as a hydrological cycle. Now, this hydrological cycle has a latent, that means hydrological cycle as a cycle, it is 33 years. It is as per documentation. Huh? It is 33 years hydrological cycle. Okay. Now, there was this, there was some this mad guy, there's some mad guy in IEEE. He wrote one paper in 1975. Control theory models in hydrology. He wrote this paper. Mad guy. Okay. And that particular paper only has a limited number of citations. 13 to be precise, as on today. 13. Alright. Now, if that particular paper has 13 citations, that means people have not been influenced by that paper. Now, wrote, somebody took a model from the control theory that's called the fuzzy Mamdani model. Took that model from control theory and applied it to predict rainfall. Remember, hydrological cycle is 33 years, and the input output feedback time is about 4 seconds in a fuzzy Mamdani model. 33 years and 4 seconds. Just imagine. So if you apply control theoretic models to hydrology, things will get bizarre. You are likely to get wrong results. So this paper was published. This paper has been published. You go and search who has done this. Fuzzy Mamdani model for rainfall forecast. Find out. This paper is available publicly. So again, I'm saying this scientific validity, when a scientific validity of a particular study requires fallibility, that means you need to know where your model fails, where your experiment fails, etc. You need to know that. Okay. And if you don't know that, the paper is likely to be rejected. This is one. Where does the paper fail? Where does the limit? Where is the limitation of your study? You have to know that. You have to announce that in the study. So there are people who know who say, "Ki bhai, okay, you take away the part of the data which is not fitting, and therefore, okay, I'm getting 97% accuracy, 98% accuracy." Now, whenever you get 98% accuracy or 97% accuracy, immediately people will say there is something wrong, there is something fishy. It is too good to be true. Okay, so then this is going to cause a bias, all right, and then of course I'm saying also saying that if there is a publication bias, then positive results are published and negative results. That means where does this experiment fail? We are not publishing it, so it will distort the scientific record. It's a responsibility of the researcher. Then again, you are talking about breach of confidentiality. So I'm talking about this again and again. Whenever there are human subjects in any study, whether it is engineering, science, biology, etc., etc., wherever there is, if there are human subjects, animal subjects, there has to be an ethical clearance. All right. There are ethical rules and ethics committees also there. It is the responsibility of the university or research organization to create an ethics committee on animal research. Okay. There has to be clearance from that particular committee. Again, I am saying all authors should have participated sufficiently. Just because you are the head of the department does not mean anybody is the head of the department. Okay, I'm not specifically saying head of the department, but if you are the head of the department, भाई उसका नाम author में डाल दो. कोई somebody is the dean, उसका नाम author में डाल दो. This is not allowed. All right, this is unethical to do. Why? Because if you have committed some mistake in the paper, the senior person will bear that responsibility, will bear the brunt of the problem. That's why you should not do this. Okay. As I told you, CNR Rao has suffered for that. So again, you have to declare the competing interest, as I am telling you again and again. So there has to be no personal bias. Okay, I'm only going to publish what you call artificial intelligence related papers and not theoretical papers. It is completely biased. Okay, and reviewer might also have a grudge against a fellow author. It is also there. Okay, because if you can fight in public, that means one to one you are fighting. Then maybe as a reviewer also you will fight. So he should not do this actually as a reviewer. Several papers from one single data set. This is called redundant or duplication. So एक data set है, simply एक ही data set है. And let me tell you that if you go to the internet, there is one diabetes data set. Everybody is using the same diabetes data set. Okay, whether that diabetes data set is true or not, nobody knows. Everybody using the same diabetes data set only. You go to Kaggle, you go to any free data sets. That is the only data set which is available and validated. That data set contains biases. बस चल रहा है. Okay. And again, taking the work of others and self without attribution is called plagiarism. Okay. And nowadays, electronic search engines and systematic reviews enable the detection of plagiarism. There is Authenticate, there is Turnitin, there are Drillbit. There are several search engines now which will enable the detection of plagiarism. And it is mandatory to give a reference to the original material. Okay. So there are these, you can take a screenshot of that. I'm not going to read this. You can take a screenshot of this one and you have to, these are, authentic, these are taken from authentic documents. Okay. These go, and clinical trials should be prospectively registered in a publicly accessible dataset. It is written there in an authentic document. You have to follow this. This is mandatory. Okay. This replacement, reduction, and refinement. This is also very important for animal related trials. Okay. Now, the predatory thing. Okay. Predatory journals. Now, what I would say, what I would always recommend is go to scopus.com/sources.uri and search for the journal. First thing that you have to do, I will tell you also that there are problems with that. Okay. Do you or your colleagues know that journal? Can you easily identify the publisher? Okay, is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? That means double blind hai, ki single blind hai, triple blind hai, all that kind of reviewing processes are there. Are the articles indexed? Okay, indexed means they either are they listed in Thomson Reuters or are they listed in Scopus? What kind of fees is charged? Is there an article publishing charge? Okay, let me tell you that whenever Dr. Mayura Kale, so let me tell you that क्या बोल रहा था मैं भूल गया मैं. Okay, so I'm telling you about cloned journals. I'm near the end of the meeting. So here is one journal. Okay, you can go to this website and find that journal. Compliance Engineering Journal is written there. Okay, and this particular journal uses a particular ISSN code. All the journals have ISSN codes and all the books have ISBN codes. Alright, go to this journal. You will find out this website has a video how to find whether this journal is reliable or not. It will tell you that you can find this journal on Scopus. This journal will tell you. Okay, but let me tell you what is being seen here. You go, I went to that journal. I find compliance engineering. This is from Scopus, a screenshot from Scopus. Okay, I am seeing this and it is saying N by A, N by A, N by A. It is written there, right? And then you say, what is written here? Coverage has been discontinued in Scopus. It is only recognized from 1995 to 2005. That means, what does this mean? This is very dangerous. That means this particular journal, Compliance Engineering Journal, the website that I showed you, this particular journal is misleading the authors who are presenting. It is misleading. Again, one interesting thing. Another cloned journal here. There is this website called moren.net. Okay. And look at this particular cover which is there. Look at this particular cover here. Okay. And it's a truly open access mechanism, right? Truly open access. That means you can upload for free and you can download for free. That's called truly open access. All right. And called the diamond open access model. Now, this is the original journal website, right? Now, what you see is there is this copy journal website. It is using the same icon as I showed you earlier. And now it says environment, general life sciences, health and medical sciences, engineering, pure sciences, humanities, interdisciplinary. Everything it has been listed here. That means this particular journal, the copy one, will publish anything under the sun. Okay. And what has been done? It is written impact factor, all that, it is all written there. So this is a clear cut case of cloning of journals. Very much available here. You can see. So thank you very much. So if you have any questions, you can fire now.